Hi everyone, welcome to the world of EdCraft. This work is completed with two colleagues, Andrew Lowe, the Charles E. and Susan T. Harris Professor of Finance at MIT Sloan School of Management, and Brian Stevens, Senior Lecturer of Business Analytics and Statistics at the Haslam College of Business, University of Tennessee, Knoxville. I'm Sean. I'm the Haslam Chair in Supply Chain Analytics at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. Andrew and Brian have already posted videos that document their studios and the design principles they've employed. Tons of great information there. I encourage you to go look at those. Today, I'm actually going to share, this is the second in my 6 video sequence. I'm going to share the studio equipment and tour of this studio. So I have 4 very specific objectives for the studio for today's session. I want to provide a brief history of the studio's evolution to give you some context. I want to share the exact equipment that is used so you can see exactly what's in the studio. I want to show the studio's layout and placement, and then finally show you some other studios built by faculty at a price much less than this, but I think that capture many of the same benefits of the studio, so that use these design principles in their home in operation today. So as a matter of just sort of a history of the studio, this was version 1 of the studio that was developed for summer of 2020 teaching. In this studio, there are 2 stations. There's the talking head station that I'm at right now. There's a lightboard station I'm going to show shortly. These 2 stations are completely decoupled. So in this studio, moving between them is an ordeal. For fall 2020, I had some improvement that I was able to sort of move the stations closer to one another. I kept all the equipment, and I would say transitions were much easier. I was getting better at it, but they weren't without risk. And then in version 3 of the studio, which is what is being filmed today, this is for spring 2021 teaching, which is now underway. And here I have optimized the station placement. I really have sort of dialed everything in. I've done some equipment upgrades, and the transitions I would say are completely natural and robust. I could literally transition now as much as is sort of pedagogically useful. Just to give a sense of the difference between version 2 and version 3, there's a lot of sort of small upgrades. So what you see here is the tabletop was replaced from version 2 to version 3. It's the sort of more narrow is about, it's like 42 inches deep, replaced with one that was 36 inches deep. Also, it's now 6 inches wide, or 6 feet wide, sorry. So that was sort of some of the major differences between these studios. And also some sound was upgraded and some other changes like that were made. This is the full equipment list for all the items that are over $100. The paper in the appendix references this in more detail, but what I would now like to do is actually jump over to the lightboard and actually show how this equipment works in context. So this is the lightboard side of the studio, and what we can see here is that we have a much more immersive experience, right? So we can cover sort of different things on this side of the studio and give students a different experience, and hopefully I can do that now. I first would just want to begin by pointing out that what I am using here was developed by Michael Peshkin, professor at Northwestern. If you Google him, which is all I've ever done, a great inventor, and this is just one invention of his. More detail is here. He has made this open source so you can build your own lightboard with directions if you so choose. I did not do that, in all honesty. I hit the easy button, and I went with a lightboard by Revolution Lightboards. They have been a fantastic resource in developing of this studio. There's lots of tips on their website as well on how to use the studio, and so they've been wonderful in helping me dial in the studio for my teaching. To give a sense of the exact equipment that is in the studio, so the first is there's a 2019 Mac Pro, 16-core, 96 gig of RAM, so I'd say a well-spec'd Mac Pro, which I use for both the streaming as well as when I'm producing videos. So use it for sort of all of those facets of the studio. And it and an Apple XDR monitor are really they're like the nerve center for this studio. And they are what both the lightboard station, what this side of the studio, and the talking head station, what they both tie into. So my sound is right here, is a Sennheiser AVX wireless lav unit. That connects into a Sound Devices MixPre 3, which then is fed into the Apple, which is what provides the sound you are hearing now. There are a set of speakers which output sound, and a few seconds earlier on this video, I forgot to mute it, so you heard a ding from a text message, but usually that wouldn't happen. So that is the sound portion of it. If we now go over to the talking head station, so the camera that you were seeing when I was over there is a Canon C70 with a 24 to 70 RF lens. That feeds into an Elgato Camlink 4K, which then is what provides the video feed into the Apple. Over on that side of the studio, there is an 82-inch Samsung 4K monitor. I like to tell the students when I'm on that side of the studio, I can see them each as, if I'm looking at them in presentation view in Zoom, I see them each as a 5x7 block. And at 5x7 inches, you can see facial expressions and the like. So I basically bought the largest TV I could find to set it up as a video monitor to see the students. There is another Canon camera on that side of the studio that acts as the document camera, and that's a Canon RP with a 24 to 105 RF lens. That goes into its own Elgato Camlink 4K, again feeding the Mac Pro as a web camera. And then there's a Stream Deck, which is my input device to quickly move between scenes. So that is all of the equipment on the talking head side of the studio that it directly ties into the Mac Pro itself. On this side of the studio, we again have a Canon C70 with a 15 to 35 RF lens. So that is what is looking at me now. That ties into a Revolution lightboard control system. So this is not the glass that is in front of me or the tabletop, sort of that part, but they actually have a separate module that actually does a lot of things, but in the context of this studio design, what it's doing is it's flipping the image and it is serving that image to the Mac Pro as another camera source. But that, since it does a lot of things, the Lightboard Control Center also directly feeds a LG 55-inch B9 OLED, which is its own confidence monitor for just the video out signal from the C70. So what is sort of coming out of the video from the C70, I see in a confidence monitor that is below, that is sort of at floor level. There is another LG B9 OLED, which is coming from the Mac Pro. And what that's doing, that is acting as the confidence monitor, sort of like the pre-staging monitor for the PowerPoint that you are seeing right now. So I am looking at the camera, but sort of right below it is another confidence monitor that has all of the PowerPoint that you see is what I am looking straight at. So these two confidence monitors don't combine these two images, they keep them separate. It's the XDR monitor, which actually has both of them together in OBS. It has just a very sort of quick view of that from here. This is a picture, another camera I've set up just for the purposes of today's shoot, which is looking over this way. And as you can see here, this is, it's got this reflection on the glass, which is the reflection of the XDR that I can see. So I can sort of quick point look that way and see how everything is combined together. There's another camera I've set up. So this is sort of on one end of the studio to give this angle in. It's going to be a little dark, but over here you can see that this is, now I've walked back over to the talking head side of the studio. There was another camera set up. Why I do this is to point out that this is where the XDR monitor is now, sitting between these two. So if we do that and we then come back, here we have these two monitors, which is sort of the main way that I can interact on this side of the studio and know what I'm pointing to and the like. So it's a really nice luxury to have these three monitors, because they allow me to very quickly debug if anything goes wrong in the studio. When we're just recording video, this isn't really a huge deal. You could just reshoot. But when you're teaching live, you got to make a split-second decision. Are you going to like pull the ripcord, or are you actually going to try to fix this? Are you going to go to plan B, or are you going to try to fix it? And with this setup, I can very quickly see, okay, if there's anything wrong in the composite image, is the Canon C70 still working properly? Yes. Okay. Am I still feeding up the PowerPoint I want to be feeding? Yes. Okay. Things are good. So you can, sort of, I'd say it helps you more quickly and seamlessly interact, but also debug. And for me, one of the huge things of the studio is have you set it up in a way where you can quickly debug problems. This has its own Elgato Stream Deck as well, which is here, which is how I was moving between scenes. So this is all of the equipment that is in the studio tied into the XDR directly. There's another set of equipment which is freestanding but still critical for the studio experience. First is the lightboard itself, which I haven't written on in this video, but is right here. And that is 95 inches wide, as well as with a table that can be raised and lowered, an electric table. This is from Revolution Lightboards. The talking head station is a 3x6 foot tabletop from the Door Store in Cambridge, as well as its own height adjustable frame from FlexiSpot. And then there's a set of lighting. There's 5 aperture lights. There's 2 C300Ds that are sort of produce the head-on light. There's 1 side light, and then there's 2 lights that light the background. So that is what's going on in sort of the freestanding unit that deliver the overall studio experience. Again, this is all of the components that are more than $100. There's a whole bunch of other things in the studio, like the drapes behind me and the like, but this was the highlights of the overall pieces of the studio. If we now I'd say sort of as one, before we leave this part, just as sort of one last look into it, I'd say that, again, if we're looking in here, we see that the transition between these two is really quite quick and allows me to move between them quite seamlessly. It's maybe the last point to raise, of course, is just the total price tag of this part of the equipment that you have seen is $54,835, to apparently be very precise, 90 cents as of February 2021. Again, for all the pieces of the equipment that cost more than $100. So now let's move back over to the lightboard side of the station and actually see how this is, see the actual precise layout of the studio. And again, in what I try to show, so you can see there, that wasn't a very smooth transition. I actually have several. Each of the cameras comes with a remote, and I actually forgot it. So I have timed it so precisely that you got to hit it and have it come over. But this is real life, and sometimes things don't go exactly as you plan. To give a sense, I thought of just, again, now that you have a higher level view of all the studio elements, I just thought it might be helpful to draw just a quick schematic of what this studio looks like. And in particular, so now we are on the talking head side of the station. There is a C70, right, with the 24-70 lens. That comes down, and that is, seeing this tabletop. And on this tabletop, sort of in this corner right here, is the XDR monitor, right? And in this corner right here is the document camera. So the confidence monitor, which is the Samsung 82-inch, is right below the camera. So these are sort of the core ingredients that you see when you're looking at this side of the studio. Again, I've set up off right here another picture of the camera, another camera, just so you can see exactly sort of that this is where the XDR monitor is. So if we're looking here, this is where the XDR monitor is. The document camera is right here. So these are the various pieces of the talking head side of the station. There is actually a curtain which sort of goes like this that you can see in. If we very quickly look, you can sort of see, it's sort of in picture, but sort of not. Let's see if it's in the other picture. No, these are, it's why you can't see the reflections from the other, from this side of the studio into the lightboard side, is that there is a curtain. This curtain actually goes all the way around like that. So there is this curtain which allows me to really make just highlight only the presentation lights which are included in the lightboard. The lightboard itself again has a C70 with a 15-35 lens, and then it has two by sort of 55-inch LGs as the confidence monitors that I'm looking at. From there is a sort of, to draw it to scale, basically right here is the lightboard. And so here we have, these two stations are, literally there is less than a foot of space between them, right, to allow me to move so quickly between them. In that side of the studio, again, if we're sort of looking through it here, we're seeing that there's the lightboard side of the studio. Again, we see that right here we have the XDR, its reflection sort of popping off to give a sense of the perspective of the studio. So this is the layout in terms of sort of how the studio is. It is relatively speaking compact, but of course this is 95 inches on the diagonal. This is 6 feet wide. So in total, the width that we are taking up is pretty substantial. This is, I'd say, probably about 14 feet in total width. The depth is not great except for in terms of taking up the intermediate space, but the width is a significant allocation. So this gives a sense, hopefully, of how the studio is laid out. Now, if we jump back and say, well, these principles can be used at maybe a sort of an equally effective scale, but if you look at my video one, the sort of purpose I'm trying to design, but I have some design principles I'm trying to capture here, but what's this on a slightly more modest scale? And I think these are a few good examples. So this is Paolo Leticia's home studio. Paolo is a professor of business analytics and statistics at the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And this shows a different approach, right? This shows an approach of using a green screen, but again, sort of using the same core elements of the lighting and in the talking head side of the station. This is Justin Gia, another professor at in business analytics and statistics at the Haslam College of Business, University of Tennessee, Knoxville. And again, here sort of Justin is again using a green screen. So I think this sort of shows, again, how you can make the talking head station in a more compact size. I'm very impressed with a fellow faculty member that did this. This is 2 pictures of the studio, this sort of head-on shot as well as what the professor is looking out on to the right, where you can see that this studio was actually built in 2 hours. So he saw an earlier version of this work and then got inspired to literally do it the next day. I'm unbelievably impressed at what he was able to accomplish in one day. So I hope what we've shown here is sort of the specifics of my studio as well as sort of other studios that take some of these design elements. This again is one step, the second step in a 6-step journey of the world of EdCraft, and I hope you continue that journey through the links below.